The basement neighbor, I always thought the creepiest part of my apartment building was the stairwell. It smelled like damp concrete and old cigarette smoke, and the lights flickered in that unreliable way you only see in cheap housing. But I was wrong. The creepiest part was the basement. I never had a reason to go down there. The laundry room was upstairs, and the landlord kept the storage units locked. Still, late at night, when I walked past the stairwell door, I'd swear I heard faint noises coming from below. At first, it sounded like pipes groaning, or maybe rats scratching. But sometimes, it sounded like a cough. One night, coming home after midnight, I paused outside the basement door. The hallway was dead silent, but from behind the door, I heard something unmistakable. Breathing. Slow, steady, breathing like someone standing just a few feet on the other side. I froze, heart hammering. Then, without warning, the breathing stopped. I convinced myself I was imagining things, but after that night, I couldn't stop noticing. Every time I passed the basement, I'd hear something shuffle, a whisper, a door creak, and sometimes, when I left my apartment in the morning, I'd find small things out of place. A shoe that wasn't mine leaning against my door. A sticky note on my doorknob with nothing written on it. Once, a penny, perfectly balanced on its edge. I finally mentioned it to my neighbor across the hall, Mrs. Klein, an older woman who'd lived in the building for years. She lowered her voice and said, "Don't go down there. Just don't." I laughed it off, but her tone stuck with me. A week later, I came home late again, and as I walked past the basement door, I noticed the latch wasn't fully closed. It was cracked open, just slightly. Against my better judgment, I pulled it open. The stairwell yawned below, pitch black except for a faint glow at the bottom. Someone had a light down there. I told myself I'd just take a quick look prove. There was nothing weird going on. Step by step, I crept down. The smell of mildew getting stronger, the air cooler and heavier. The glow came from under the laundry room door. I pushed it open. Just a sliver. Inside, I saw something that made my stomach turn. There was a mattress on the floor, surrounded by piles of trash, half-a-ton food, and scattered clothing. Against the far wall, taped in neat rows, were dozens of sheets of paper. I squinted, realizing they were photos of people in the building. My neighbors. And mixed in, I saw pictures of me walking up the stairs, checking my mailbox, sleeping in my bed, taken through my window. I staggered back, my foot catching on the floor, and the noise echoed from behind the boiler. Something shifted. A figure stood up, tall, thin, hair hanging in greasy strands over their face. They were watching me. I bolted up the stairs, slamming the door shut behind me, sprinting to my apartment. My hands shook as I locked every bolt, pressing my back against the door. The police came the next day. They searched the basement and found the makeshift room, but whoever had been living there was gone. No fingerprints, no trace. Just the mattress, the trash, and the photos, every single one, torn down and missing. It's been months since then, but I can't shake the feeling I'm still being watched. Some nights I wake up and swear I hear breathing again just outside my door.
The locked motel room a few years ago. I was on a solo road trip, trying to save money by staying in cheap roadside motels. Most of them were harmless, stingy, outdated, but fine for a night's rest. But one of them still keeps me up at night. It was in a small town I'd never heard of before. The kind of place with one gas station, one diner, and not much else. I pulled into a little L-shaped motel that looked frozen in time, like it hadn't been updated since the 70s. The man at the front desk gave me a key, an actual metal key, not a card for room 6. He seemed distracted, kept glancing at a wall clock behind him, like he wanted me to hurry up and leave. The room itself was what you'd expect. Faded curtains, scratchy bedspread, buzzing fluorescent light. But as soon as I stepped inside, I felt this pressure. Like the air was thicker, heavier somehow. Still, I was exhausted. I set my bag down and went to the bathroom to splash water on my face. That's when I noticed it. A door at the far side of the room. Not the front door, not the bathroom door, another one. It was painted shut around the frame, but you could clearly see it was a door. The knob had been removed, just a hole where it should have been, and carved into the wood, faint but definitely there, were scratches. Dozens of them, like someone had been clawing from the other side. I felt a chill go through me. I went back to the front desk and casually asked if all the rooms had connecting doors. The man didn't answer at first. Then he just shook his head and muttered, "Don't worry about it. Stay in your room." Not exactly reassuring. Back in the room, I tried to ignore the door. I turned on the TV, scrolled my phone, anything to distract myself. But the longer I sat there, the more aware I became of that door. The way the shadows seemed thicker around it. The way the air near it felt cooler. Round midnight, I turned off the lights and tried to sleep. That's when I heard it, a knock. Soft, deliberate. 3 knocks, right on that sealed door. I froze. My eyes adjusted to the darkness, fixed on that faint outline. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure whoever or whatever was on the other side could hear it. Another knock. Louder this time. I whispered, "Hello," before I could stop myself. No response. Just silence. Then, the sound of fingernails dragging slowly down the wood, scraping. Long, deliberate. Right where those old scratches had been. I grabbed my stuff, stuffed it back into my bag, and bolted. I didn't even bother checking out. I just drove until I found another town with another motel. The next morning, still rattled, I called the original place to at least explain why I left. But here's the part that makes my skin crawl to this day. The number was disconnected. I thought maybe I'd written it down wrong. So I searched the name of the motel online. Nothing. No listing, no reviews, no trace of it ever existing. I've checked again over the years, thinking maybe I'd misremembered the name or the town. But there's never been a motel there. Not according to any map or directory. But I know what I saw. I know where I stayed. And I'll never forget that sound, the slow, patient scratching from whatever was trapped on the other side of that door.
And an endless stretch of dark highway. But there's one night I'll never forget. It was around 2:30 in the morning, middle of nowhere, no streetlights, just a 2-lane road cutting through woods and farmland. That's when I saw her, a woman, standing on the shoulder, dressed in a pale, old-fashioned dress. Not like a prom dress, but something you'd see in a black and white photo from decades ago. She held her arm out like she was hitchhiking. Now, I know better than to pick up strangers at night, but something about her made me slow down. She didn't look dangerous, she looked lost, exhausted. So I pulled over, rolled down the window, and asked if she needed help. She leaned in just enough for me to see her face. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with dark circles under her eyes. Her voice was soft, barely above a whisper. "Can you take me home?" I unlocked the door. She climbed in and folded her hands neatly in her lap, staring straight ahead. I asked her where home was, and she gave me an address about 15 miles up the road. The drive was quiet, too quiet. I tried to make small talk, asked if she lived with family, if she was okay, but she barely responded. Just short yes or no answers. Eyes fixed on the road like she was forcing herself not to look anywhere else. I remember the air in the car felt strange, cold, though the heater was on, heavy, like the atmosphere before a storm. Finally, we reached the address. It was an old farmhouse, dark except for a porch light. I pulled into the gravel drive, turned to her, and said, "Here you go." But the seat was empty. She was gone. I slammed the brakes, my heart pounding. The door hadn't opened. The seatbelt was still buckled, but she was just gone. I scrambled out of the car, looking around, half expecting to see her walking up to the house. Nothing. The yard was empty, silent except for the chirping of crickets. Shaken, I went up to the door and knocked. After a long moment, an older man opened it, looking groggy and suspicious. I stammered out that I thought I'd just given a young woman a ride here. Described her, even mentioned the dress. His expression changed immediately. He didn't look confused anymore. He looked tired, resigned. "You're not the first," he said. "That was my daughter. She died on this road almost 30 years ago." I wanted to argue, but the way he said it, flat, certain, almost rehearsed, made the words catch in my throat. He told me she'd been hit by a drunk driver coming home from a dance. Ever since then, people passing through claimed to see her, always asking for a ride, always vanishing before she made it home. I don't know how long I stood there, the porch light buzzing overhead, trying to make sense of what I'd just experienced. The man finally just shook his head and shut the door, like he'd dealt with this too many times before. I drove away, hands shaking on the wheel, headlights cutting through the empty road. I checked the rearview mirror every few seconds, half expecting to see her sitting there again. I never saw her after that night, but whenever I drive through long stretches of road at night, I can't help glancing at the shoulder, waiting to see another figure with her hand raised, asking for a ride home she'll never make.
I thought about moving, but I couldn't afford to break my lease, so I stayed. Weeks went by like this, calls every night, whispers that got more personal. The voice began repeating things I'd said earlier in the day, laughing softly when I was alone. Once it whispered my full name, slowly, syllable by syllable. This time, the whisper was different, closer, not just through the receiver, but behind me. It said, "You shouldn't have answered." The line went dead, and from that night on, the phone never rang again. But sometimes, when I'm lying in bed in the dark, I swear I can still hear breathing soft, steady just inches behind me.